I think it's a misconception of how quote unquote easy streaming and content creation and running this thing really is. A lot of people go from a hobby and then treat this like a job. But there's a difference between treating your content and your total process from a job to a career. Because once you change the mindset to a career in long-term growth, that changes everything. So many people get caught up in the numbers. So if I have one person watching my stream, or if I have 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, whatever, you get so caught up in those day-to-day numbers, those day-to-day growth. You're not even looking about how far you've actually grown.
Hello, my name is Minges and welcome to Unfiltered Conversations with Creators. On episode 20, we are lucky enough to talk to Atlas, the self-titled everything doer behind Team Summertime. He's done a ton of work for Optic Gaming, the Women's COD League, freelances as a graphic artist, and is a really genuine guy with a wealth of experience behind the scenes. All of his socials will be linked down below, so if you enjoyed our chat, it would really help if you left a like, comment, and subscribe for more Conversations with Creators. All right, let's get started. Atlas, we start off every podcast with a food-related question, so I have to ask you, man, what do you put in your perfect burger?
Ooh, this might be, like, when I was younger, I was like a strict cheeseburger, ketchup, that was it. Now I've kind of like grown up a little bit, so I'm down for like tomato, lettuce, ketchup, mayo, like everything besides mustard. If you put mustard on anything, it's criminal. And you shouldn't do that because
really
mustard's awful. It's not good. But that's just like a me thing. Maybe I'm too young to appreciate mustard, but for now, everything besides mustard.
No, I'm not a huge mustard guy either, but I thought that was mainly like a US thing where everyone's like down to put mustard on everything, on burgers and stuff, but
it seems that way. Okay. Also, Americans are super obsessed with like ranch dressing, which I don't know what you'd call that over there, but I think that's criminal as well. Like pizza, really? Everything. Yeah, I can't do it.
Wow, you're coming in hot with the hot takes.
I know, I'm ready.
You're ready.
Here for it.
Nah, but it's funny because, yeah, to some, less is more. Like people go in with just the basic ingredients. Some just want to pile everything in there. But I thought it was really interesting to hear about the elements that make up something that you enjoy, because you make things that a lot of people enjoy, and I can't wait to hear about how you pick those elements. But first, let's start with how you got into gaming. What did you grow up doing, enjoying, and stuff when you were younger?
Oh boy, earliest gaming memories were, wow, Minecraft has always been a staple for me. I've been playing Minecraft for like since the alpha. It was always something that I could just like, when you start gaming on something like any game, you start playing, you're like, oh, it's like 9 p.m. and then you blink, it's like 2 a.m. and you're like, where did the time go? That's Minecraft for me in anything. But I always played a bunch of different stuff. I was into COD. I loved like the Assassin's Creed series. I've been gaming forever, as long as I can remember. I'm like Little Big Planet, like all the PlayStation, Xbox, Modern Warfare 2. I loved it all. So really, I would say the biggest staple for me in gaming was Minecraft, but like I've just been all over the place with it.
Did you grow up with like an Xbox or a PlayStation or anything like that?
So I'm the youngest of 6 brothers. 5 brothers and a sister. And the older brother of mine had an Xbox 360. And so I would always go steal his Xbox 360. And I was PlayStation gang. He had Xbox. So I would always go just steal his when he wasn't home, like out with friends. And I think that got us into quite a bit of arguments when he would come home and I'm like playing Modern Warfare 2 on his Xbox. I was always the kind of ratty little brother where right when that door shuts, I'm in there playing on Rock Band or whatever. So yeah, I was the little brother that definitely took advantage of the Xbox situation. And I guess years later I did get an Xbox, but I was more PlayStation for a while. So It was really a little bit of both.
Yeah, I was a PlayStation game growing up. So when I started gaming, it was like OG Nintendo days, and then when PlayStation, Xbox, came out, I really wanted to go. I actually wanted to go like a Nintendo 64, but my dad was like, "No, the games are too childish. We'll get you a PlayStation. You can play like Gran Turismo and all these kind of things, like racing games and all that," which set me down that track for a while. But I did miss out on like GoldenEye, the OGs, Halo, and all that kind of thing. And I always felt like I was missing out when people talk about their first shooters as like Halo and stuff. I never got to experience that.
So being the youngest, I actually had quite a bit of time in my life where I was just watching my brothers or my siblings or my friends play games. Like, so I always got the enjoyment of just watching other people, because whenever I would try to pick up the controller, I was like, I couldn't do anything. Like, I was so bad. And I've never really been a person that was just like naturally good. Like, everyone has a friend that can do, like, they just pick up a controller, they're insane. I'm absolutely the opposite. It takes me months and months and months to even get like to a competent level. And so I was always, from like a young age, just super excited to just watch people play. So my first interaction with like Halo and all those kind of shooters were very much I was just watching. So I'd watch my brother, one of my older brothers, play the original Halo on the OG Xbox, and every Halo after that. And I didn't really pick up on Halo as much as other people in the space, but I definitely think there was a core aspect to it where I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like, you're a space guy and you're shooting aliens. This is cool. It didn't really have that impression on me until way later. Until I got to actually look back and like play Halo 3, ODST. It's like such a staple for other people, but it just doesn't really carry that same weight for me. Which actually is pretty funny, because all these amazing content creators are like, oh yeah, I started off Halo when I first started walking, and I was like, I didn't really have that experience, but it's definitely an amazing community and amazing franchise. I definitely see the value in that.
Yeah. So what was your first taste of watching other people play competitively, or streams or Twitch or something like that? Was that something that was like just you heard it off somebody, or how did you fall into that sort of world?
So I've always been a big YouTube watcher. I've been watching YouTube videos since like YouTube started. As soon as I could get really an internet connection, I really don't remember how I got onto YouTube, but I just remember forever watching YouTube videos. So I've seen creators through their entire life cycle of, finding them under 1,000 subscribers to now they have multi-millions. Like, I've watched so many creators do that journey. And so when Twitch, I wasn't part of the Justin TV era. And I was honestly, when I first heard of Twitch, it was just, hey, like, it was a YouTuber that, probably one of the Optic guys, to be honest, was like, hey, I'm streaming over on Twitch, come check it out. And I was like, oh, you can, like, it was such a realization for me, probably more of a fan moment of like, oh, I can go ask them questions live instead of like typing a YouTube comment, hoping they would reply, I guess. Because YouTube comments back in the day were actually like structured well and not just full of bots and
toxic,
toxic, whatever. It was more of like a forum, and there was like video replies and all of that. So once I finally learned about Twitch, it just kind of opened that door for me. Probably 2014, 2013, maybe. But I felt very late to Twitch. Like, it was already all set up and like people were getting subs and all that. So I wasn't super early on Twitch. I felt actually pretty late to the whole like Twitch boom.
Wow, crazy you consider that late. Because I got into Twitch. I mean, I had a Twitch account probably from following, like similar to you, from a FIFA soccer streamer posting YouTube videos, and I'll make that account, I'll go watch them once, and I probably forgot about it. But I only really started consistently paying attention to that platform, live streaming in general, probably around COVID, which is, I know a lot of people started then as well. But I remember signing up for a YouTube account like in 2008 or something with one of the Call of Duties. You could save your own clips from the console and upload it to YouTube. And I've still got those clips just because I wanted to save them. It was either me like fighting people that I knew in my clan, and then like you got to, roast them a little bit. But it's really interesting that's pretty much a very common thing, is a lot of people were finding creators on YouTube and finding things that they like to watch, and then the shout out, hey, come check out my live stream, brought a lot of people into this community thing. And a lot of people started streaming themselves. So when did you start streaming? I think it was I looked it up. It was like 2018 or 19 or something like that.
Yeah, and it had to have been around that time frame. And when I was watching YouTube back in the day, I had always wanted to do something within content. I knew that like watching all these YouTubers like Timothy De La Ghetto, like Philip DeFranco, iJustine, like all these OGs now, I had always wanted to do something with content. So I'd make videos with my friends. I wanted to pretty much Casey Neistat. I was a huge fan of, and I was pretty much just ripping his content spiel and just walking around my neighborhood with a camera at like 6 a.m. just like doing a walk. And I thought, oh, well, if I get a ton of B-roll and I just put it together, that's like a life montage, I guess. And so, so streaming was always that, it was easier at the time because I'd been like falling in love with PC building and everything like that. So I was like, well, I want to build this super cool setup. And so I started streaming like, I think Fortnite with my friends and just some of my IRLs. And I go back and look at some of those clips and they hurt me because I feel so cringe. But that's everyone on the internet.
Yeah. At the time, you're like, this is super cool. But now
I was like, I felt like the streamer, and I was like, I'm blown up. I'm going here. Like, and I think I even did some YouTube streams, but I just found Twitch was easier for that. Now I don't know so much, but it was like Fortnite with friends, and then slowly evolved into like Overwatch and Call of Duty, and so it was always usually like a shooter, but Fortnite or something like that. Yeah.
And so at this time, were you like into the CDL and watching competitive stuff like that, or were you more like recreational, watching people have fun or like funny videos and all that kind of thing?
I had the same exact reaction to esports as probably everyone else that doesn't truly understand it. I actually started watching Call of Duty esports on Advanced Warfare Champs, and so that's when I learned about Optic and like the competitive side of Optic. I was like, oh, these guys like play games from like, that's so cool. Like,
that's their living.
How does this work? And then I see them like coming out on stage, and like I'm like, this was a world that probably if I figured out when I was younger, I would have lost, like I would have just committed my entire being to it without even knowing. So then once I pretty much figured out about like CDL or CWL at the time, Optic and all that, I was like, oh, I am the next COD like esports player, like just like everyone else. So I started playing GBs with my friends. I started being like, all right, well, I'm waking up and screaming every day. And I was atrocious. I've never, like, as I kind of said before, I've always wanted to do like content and everything, but I never had the thumbs for it. I'm really good at like kind of dialing in everything else, like the quality. I can figure out the quality and layouts of videos and everything like that. But when it comes to like the raw talent of playing the game, it's not it for me. But I uploaded like kill challenges. There's a infamous Scump video where he goes like 88-0, and I was like, I have to do that, and I tried. Never could even get close, but it was those kind of videos, the talking commentaries and all of that, that like truly propelled me to love this space that I'm in today.
So how did you end up hooking up with the guys from Optic and all that kind of thing? I'm asking as somebody who is although I've been gaming for a long time, I'm very unfamiliar with the whole scene. So I've, like you said, Advanced Warfare and all that, I kind of knew about competitive COD, and I was like, oh, that would be super cool. But in Australia here, the coverage wasn't there, and I didn't think to look it up on the internet and all that kind of thing. I kind of thought, like, you saw it advertised in the game a little bit, and I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. That would be cool to play. But now looking back on it, like, it is a big event. There's lights, there's cameras, there's an audience, there's people cheering. Like, it's like a really cool world to be in. So how did you find your way into that sort of world?
So I was a huge fan of, don't let him hear this now, but I was a huge fan of Hitch. He knows that, and I was a very big fan of how Optic told stories, because every other esports organization that you would watch, it was always like, hey, we're partnered with blah blah, and like, here's our new members, and like, it just felt very bland. But Optic always had something, and Hex is a big proponent of that, of storytelling and making it feel right. So one of the biggest memories I have of that is just how they would announce teams, and they would have this series called Vision. Hitch was the videographer behind it, and they would announce, like, you were waiting to hear the announcement at the end of the episode. So it was, whether they had announced a new team or a new sponsor or a new series, it was always like you're waiting for something, and when they would drop it, it would just like blow you away. And so I was always fascinated with that storytelling aspect, and how they could surprise you even if you were trying to like guess their next move. So getting into it, I found out about their streams. I was a huge fan of like Big Timer, Maniac, Hitch, of course. And so I just started popping to their streams, and you could gift subs, and I felt like I was making a difference enough to stick around. And that probably got me to stick around way more, because it was like, oh, yo, Atlas, thank you so much for like 5 gifted or whatever. And it didn't ever feel like there's a huge conversation now around like parasocial relationships, but it never felt like, or maybe I'm just numb to it now, but I never felt like I was like involved. Like, I never felt connected. It was just, I felt like a viewer that was changing the dynamic of the show. It was more about changing the direction of the show you were watching, because on TV, you never got to, unless I guess if it was like a hotline or something, you can never really interact with that. And so there was a direct interaction between you and the talent, to see that. And it was very intriguing. So I just started hanging out a lot, and after a while I hung around TST. They went full time with Elgato, and that was like they needed the support, and they were very open about like, we're taking this full-time risk. We have no idea how this is going to work. And I felt like I wanted to support these guys because I enjoyed watching their content. It was never more than that, but I always knew I wanted to work in this field. So I always wanted to be around it.
That's really cool. So in the terms of the working relationship between Optic and TST, is that like a subdivision of Optic, would you say? Like, how would you describe that dynamic?
Yeah, so Optic organization and Team Summertime are just content creators for Optic. It's a little deeper than that, because Hitch is the creative director of Optic, so it's more of a tight-knit relationship. And how that really works is just they're Optic focused. They always love Optic. They years ago, Optic split up, and there was a large merger and buyouts, buy-ins, everything like that. And so they've jumped around from like NRG, which turned into the Huntsman, and then back on Optic. But they've always been Optic focused. Hitch is the most dedicated person to this fan base that I know. And I mean, Hex, of course, he's the CEO, but like Hitch, working day in, day out, understands how this fan base works. He knows what they want before they want it, how to introduce things. They've always been very centric, and so if Hitch is around it, it's most likely an Optic creation. And so they're content creators for Optic. So I work primarily with TST, and I do some work with Optic on the side as well.
So one thing I find really interesting about when you sort of are a fan of somebody or an organization or something like that, and then you start getting involved in the day-to-day or the inner workings behind the scenes and all that, I find the respect level goes up a ton, because you realize how much work some people do behind the scenes, how much dedication and all that. A lot of the stuff that will never be seen by the public, it will go unnoticed forever. But how much of that have you witnessed when you started going from being a fan to behind the scenes and working with some of these guys?
You never, like, there are things that you will never see that, like, I guess there's always been like a saying of don't meet your idols or something like that. Like, don't meet them because your expectations are going to like crumble around you. The funniest thing about that is, like, since it never really felt truly parasocial to me, it was like these guys are doing their job. I want to help them, but it never felt like I was owed anything. Like, they don't owe me. They don't know me. So truly getting to see some of the work that gets done and the things that you never even consider, it's like those are the true moments that I now super appreciate. But I don't think I could have appreciated it as a fan, because once you're in it, you're in it. And there's a very deep misunderstanding within a fan to a creator, let's say, of like how things happen and how things work. Fans assume that content creators can just like sign a new sponsor and that's unlimited money, or they can just throw a tournament, it's super easy. Like, you have no idea how these tournaments are thrown or how these deals actually go down behind the scenes. And I'm like just stepping into that world over the past couple of years. So it's still surprising. Not every single day isn't the same. There's no, like, I don't go and clock in and like, oh, well, time to fill out my report and time to fill out like no, it's always different. It's always changing, and you kind of just have to be on your feet about it.
What was the biggest shocker, that the one thing that like the penny dropped, like, wow, that's completely different to what I thought it would be like coming into this?
So I came from a corporate job before esports. I left a finance role, and pretty much my job was ending my position and wanted me to either pursue esports because it was something I was committing a ton of time to, or stepping into a role that was going to take all my time in the world. And so I had always kind of been around doing things for TST, and it slowly started stacking up to the point where it was my full-time. Like, I was doing social posts and helping them try to run the Discord and like fixing things, and like all these little things you don't realize start to turn into a full-time thing, because you have to use your brain constantly to be like, okay, I have this social post, I have this, do we have a sponsor post, and like slowly starting to work those things out. And so finally, when my job came to me and was like, hey, we're ending your position, what do you want to do? The jump that I proposed to TST, and I actually made a recorded video, and it was just a full layout of like, here's what I want to do for you guys, I want to do this full time, how do I really do this? It was a shock of like how unstructured esports felt, and how new, even though we're 10 years into this thing, on how much of an infancy content creation and esports really is. It's still very much some people call it unprofessional, but I just think you have to live within a culture to truly thrive within it. And so I think that was the biggest shock for me. Was I came in with like a full corporate, like, okay guys, here's my slides, here's what I want to do. That's not, now probably is, but at the time it was like unheard of for me to be doing like spreadsheets and PowerPoints and all that. Now in a corporate mindset, that absolutely makes sense, but esports wasn't really like that until maybe the last couple of years.
Yeah, it is one of those things that it's not a direct translation, being a high level in the corporate or business world and bringing that over to the content creation world, and the just even the interactions with people is a little bit more, I want to say relaxed, but like even the way of presenting yourself and talking to someone can be a lot different compared to being in a different sort of environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a different mentality going into this, because for a bunch of people, they start off as a hobby.
Yep.
And so these content creators, if you think of like startups, are not built to be a corporate entity. And so that's why you see a lot of like esports organizations. Look at FaZe right now. All of their old members are trying to get their organization that they sold off when they were kids. They're trying to get that back. So content creators as a whole and the culture around it, if you're like, hey, you want to be on this podcast? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, sure. That's great. Some people are like, nah, dog, I don't really know. You know what I mean? Like there's a different layer, but I think it's just something about the culture that makes it unique. I don't think it's immature by any means. I just think you have to understand, you have to read the room sometimes. And to some people coming in of being like, well, why is this, like, why are we not being more professional? I think you have to understand who your target demographic audience is. It's like you're creating a content, esports, whatever, around a younger audience. And that really is like, that's just the culture that we live in. That's internet culture.
Yeah, it is. I was about to say it's like an internet culture thing. And but what would you say would be the biggest, how would I say this? The biggest thing that maybe the audience or fans of esports and organizations and streamers, what do you think the biggest disconnect is between what they think to be true and what is the reality of what happens in the scene or as a creator or something like that?
I think it's a misconception of how quote unquote easy streaming and content creation and running this thing really is. It's not. A lot of people go from a hobby and then treat this like a job. But there's a difference between treating your content and your total process from a job to a career. Because once you change the mindset to a career in long-term growth, that changes everything. So many people get caught up in the numbers. So if I have one person watching my stream, or if I have 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, whatever, you get so caught up in those day-to-day numbers, those day-to-day growth. You're not even looking about how far you've actually grown and focusing on that long-term growth of, instead of, I want to have 100 viewers this week, or I want to grow my esports team to, however many people. It's look at this 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down the line, and then just work backwards. Most people assume that this is just easy. We just pop on a camera and we just start streaming and recording and making videos. But like, I think there's an underappreciation of what goes into actually making YouTube videos, especially now. Like the thumbnail creation, and I bet you've definitely had an experience with that, like creating your own short form and creating your own clips and creating these episodes. It takes a lot more time than you actually realize. You're like, I don't just pop on a camera. And so I think it's the underappreciation of how much work it really takes to do this thing.
Has that hit you personally before? Like, have you thought, I need to do more, or did you always have this attitude of, I'm going to be doing a million things at once? Like how easy did you come into it, and how would you say that's changed now?
I've always had this blind confidence in myself to be like, my catchphrase, motto, whatever you want to call it, is I'll figure it out. So if you bring me a problem, I will try to figure it out and bring you a solution. I'm not going to just say I don't know. But I feel like I am a victim of imposter syndrome, and I have always been that way. I never think my work's good enough. I'm confident in a blind confidence of I can figure it out, and I'm always trying to learn more. So it never came easy. Never felt like I was one of the greats, or like I still don't feel that way. I still don't feel like there's a level of success that I've hit. Because to me, it's just a day-to-day growth to fulfill that 1, 5, 10 years down the line. So you're not going, like, I never thought overnight, oh, I'll be handling, all these different projects. It was step by step, day by day, where it was like, oh, well, I guess I'm doing this now. Or, oh, I want to work with this person. How do I make that happen? It's always been a working backwards mentality for me of, here's my goal. How do I do that? Well, let me just plan it out.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you brought up that imposter syndrome sort of thing that happens, because I feel like I would assume that happens to a lot of people, and it is one of those things where you could say to someone like, what am I doing here? I'm such a phony and all this kind of thing, and they'll come back at you with the facts like, hey, you're doing a really good job, your numbers are this, your numbers are that. But sometimes that logic just doesn't help, and there's nothing,
never equates.
There's nothing to get that nagging person off your shoulder saying, you can't do this, what are you doing here, you're fake, you're not good enough, the work you're doing is not to scratch.
I think it's what you do with that voice, though.
Yeah.
Because for such a long time, I was always taking it so deep of being like, I'm not good enough to be here. I don't have like all these, I'm surrounded by super talented people. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? And then I remember that I quit my full-time job to jump into this thing, and nobody here is an expert. Not in everything. You could be an expert in something, but you're not an expert in everything. And so even though I do a bunch of different things, it's okay to not be good at it. And there's things I'm not going to like. There's things I'm going to love wholeheartedly. But like, I'm never going to be an expert in it all. And understanding that I can learn and try to reciprocate that learning in next projects, next goals is like super important. The creators you watch and the streamers you watch, they don't have all the answers. And I think understanding the value that you're bringing to the table helps you dial in that voice instead of saying, I'm not good enough. I'm not, what am I doing here? Is like, well, what do I have next to work on? Or where can I bring this next project? What did I learn from that? What value did I get from that? What value did I provide? I think it's a super important thing that should be brought up more in the conversation of not what you're doing, but how you're doing it, what you learned.
Yeah. And I think that's important to note as well, is that it's never just you learn to do a certain thing, say, make a video this way, and then that's the way it's going to be for the next 5 years or something like that. Things are always changing and evolving, and being able to be humble in that you realize that what you've just done is probably outdated very, very soon, and you're going to have to keep going and learning and evolving with the trends and with everything else that develops in the world of content creation and competing.
If you're making videos, your first 50 to 100, they're probably going to suck. You're probably going to hate them. Every clip that you watch, you might hate. Every personal creation, you might not enjoy. But the next one, it might be fantastic. It might be one of the favorite things you've ever done. And understanding when you're working on something that, hey, maybe I appreciate more of this process instead of just the end goal, that changes your entire outlook of it. You have to enjoy the entire process to be able to marvel in the riches of that end success. And it's, if you don't enjoy the process, if all you want to do is get the attention from your YouTube videos or your streams or whatever project you're working on, then you're doomed to fail.
Yeah.
Right. Because you have to love the process. And even if there's things I don't love about this whole job and this whole thing, it's like I enjoy just learning and being a part of that process to truly provide value to something.
So, all right, let's try to explain what it is that you do, because I know that it's hard to put a finger on exactly what you've done, what it is your title or role is behind the scenes. But so tell us what do you think it is that you do?
Okay. So I'll break it down in different areas, and then we can kind of come up with that solution. So I am the manager and quote unquote everything doer of Team Summertime. So what that really means is if there's logistics that need to be figured out, let's say we want to run a tournament, I'm the logistics guy to make sure that happens. I would say I am a graphics guy that edits videos. I help put on streams. I help set up things. I manage the madness behind Team Summertime. So whether that's, fulfilling sponsorship agreements or sitting in on meetings, even just taking notes in a meeting or setting up spreadsheets, anything like that. That's kind of why it seems like everything doer is kind of an appropriate title, but it's really just anywhere that I see something like something that's needed. I'm not going to wait around for somebody to do it. Here's my solution, because I would rather a solution be provided than everyone be like, oh, well, I forgot. And not saying that TST is anything like that, but it's just, that's the kind of mentality I go into things with. And on the side, I do freelance graphics and like stream designs and all that with my girlfriend. And other than that, I'm pretty much always just around. So if there's something that needs to get done, I try to figure it out. I don't have a direct answer, but that's the best I got.
No, I do like the way that you've sort of described that, is that also you're a person that's you take responsibility for things that might not necessarily be your job. So you'll step up when something needs to be done. You'll put your hand up and you'll say, I can do that, and you'll figure out a way to get it done.
I think that's just something that is very much needed in this space, because I started off as a moderator, but I didn't think about graphics. I didn't think about editing videos. I didn't think about community management or how to run tournaments or anything like that. I just knew I wanted to be a part of it. And so again, I worked backwards and I said, well, what will they need? At the time, everyone had a video editor, but I was like, well, I don't think I'm quite like our True is our editor for TST. This guy's like light years ahead of what I could be as an editor. So I'm like, well, I can edit short form. And so I started editing short form and like doing smaller edits and then working on social media and everything like that. So it never really started off as like, I want to be their video editor. It was always, well, I know content creators are going to need someone that can think for them and truly understand the vision and the value that they need, and then create yourself into something like that. Not changing who you are, but creating yourself into something like that was very important. So that's something that a lot of people don't understand, is like when it comes to sponsorships or like meetings and building, and like the business as a whole is a startup. And once you start to think about it as a startup, a lot of people just want to be like, oh, I'd hire that on Fiverr, or I'd go hire that out. Content creators are not made of money. It doesn't matter. Unless you're at a Mr. Beast like level where he's having hundreds of people like work for him, that's not how this works. So I took that upon myself to understand how graphics work and animation and everything, so we could have that in-house. As a business valuation, it's like sometimes it is important to delegate and move things out, but Other times it's like, well, why don't I just learn that so then I can add that to my list of things that I can do?
Yeah. I was looking at your level content website and looking at some of the graphics and wallpapers and all the things that you do for people. So I just assumed that you went to like a graphics school or like a design school or something like that. Are you pretty much saying you're self-taught?
If you consider learning off of YouTube tutorials self-taught, then I'm 100% self-taught.
Wow.
If you don't, then I'm a graduate of YouTube University with, I should have a plaque on my wall for that.
Yeah.
No, I never went to school for like graphic design or anything. I have amazing people that I learn from, and I have good friends that have been graphic designers and stuff like that. But I look at it like, does it look cool to me? Yeah, then it works. Like, I didn't go to school for color science or anything. So probably to some like true graphic designers that went to school for this thing years and years, they probably look at my stuff and is like, bro, his like shadows are all off or like anything. But I'm like, it looks cool to me. And I also don't have the time to, like, some of these projects, I get hit with, hey, can we get this by tomorrow? And so it's not like I don't get to create my finest work. But honestly, that's one of the parts of my job that I love the most is like, I don't rush my work, and I'll say, hey, if this is possible or it's not. But sometimes you just have to let a project go. And if it doesn't meet your criteria of perfect, then like you'd be working on it for years. And like that just doesn't work in this kind of case. So some of the freelance stuff I do, it used to be like, oh, I could turn stream designs, complete rebrands, everything like that around in like 3 days. Now it's like, hey, I have like the next 2 months, and then we could start working on it. Because I don't want to give you something that you're not happy with. And so that was always my goal with creating graphics and overlays. And my girlfriend does emotes and badges and illustrations. And so it was never about how do we do this like by the book, but it was always, do you like it? Do I like it? Perfect. Then that's the end concept. It doesn't have to be more than that, or it doesn't have to be more by the book or by the definition of that. No,
exactly. And it's like, it's very impressive work too. And it's amazing to think that you could start from scratch, learning from YouTube and do all that yourself, because a lot of us can get caught up in the details and making something just perfect, one perfect thing. Whereas sometimes it's good to make it good enough, impressive enough, and then not overthink it, put it out there and move on to the next thing, because you can get caught up in too much perfectionism sometimes.
There's always something about creating a graphic or like a background or a video, whatever, that if the end client is happy with it and you are, as the creator, are happy with it, then dragging yourself through the process of what is my sunk cost into this thing. Now, if a client comes to me and says, hey, I want a full stream rebrand, I want to make sure they enjoy it. So I'm not going to be stingy with iteration changes and all of that. Now, if they want like everything redone from zero, then that's like a different story. But like, you have to tailor to what you enjoy. Because when you have, let's say, a stream package that like you love your overlays, you love how the alerts work, you love how chat looks on screen, I'm the person that does the detail work that makes sure that like I'm okay with it. Because, and Blake and I from TST joke about this all the time, I'm super critical if something's like a pixel or two off, but I don't have that time to always like recalibrate that thing. So it's like there's something go. About exactly there's something about to just like learning to let go, and that was a huge lesson for me. Because I've always wanted things to be like, yep, now that's good for me, but it doesn't always work like that.
No. But how much time would you dedicate to your freelance and all that graphic work compared to what you do with TST?
That has been something that over the last year or two, I have been approaching, I would say.
Okay.
This job, this career, every project is new. So that is the hardest thing for me to explain to how these projects work. And I just finished up a 6-month project like 3 days ago, and I'm jumping into my next one immediately. And that's 4 to 5 hours a day, just focusing on that. On top of everything, making sure that for TST, for example, we have socials done, and we have, if they need anything for stream, the business side behind it. I don't do everything for the business, but at least my parts. This is like a full-time, this is like, you have to kind of be manic a little bit about it to be running it. But recently I've definitely taken time to, let's just say, I work a 12-hour day. It's like I'm working 8 hours on TST. I take a couple hours for myself and then a couple hours for freelance. And it's really the scope of freelance projects that I have, because I don't want to overpromise, underperform. So you always underpromise, overperform. And so if I say, hey, I'll get you something like this, I want it to be the best work I could possibly give you. One, for your dollar, but also your time. I'm not going to ruin that experience for you. And if it takes me a little bit extra time, then so be it.
So it's not like you take on too much, like you're aware of your schedule and you try and temper expectations. You'll say, I can get to that in a couple of months, or are you one
recently?
Of those? Yeah. Okay.
I used to be like, when I first started, I was like, if I say no to this, then my life is ruined. Yeah. I'm never going to get paid, whatever. And so I'd sign on to everything. And then last year at our off-season tournament, it's like a charity tournament that I crammed my entire life into this, and I poured so much time, blood, sweat, and tears into it. And after the event, I literally fell to my knees and was like, this is the most exhausted I've ever been in my entire life. And I overworked myself, and I learned my limit. So this year was a very different approach to that. Was, hey, let's be more organized. Let's take this some time just for yourself. So whether that's fitness or health or whatever. And so now it's a very much like, let me give you the real answer instead of being like, yes, I can do the impossible, because sometimes, especially in this industry, urgency is not the same on everyone's plate. And so sometimes it's okay to be like, no, but here's the solution I can provide you in the meantime, while I create something that you'll truly be happy with.
Okay. Has it been hard to, I mean, like you said earlier, you were taking on a lot and maybe overworking yourself a little bit. And the type of industry that you're in, like you said, you move, as soon as you've done a project, you move on to the next one. Is it hard to take yourself out and look back at either the things you've done or what you've achieved or where you've come from and appreciate it? Or are you still sort of like in the day-to-day?
No, I think that's a skill that you pick up on with years of experience. At first, I was always like, what's next? What's new? What's going on? But now it's like, now I can appreciate what I learn throughout it. And when I get to look back at projects, I'm so excited because I'm like, here's how I did it last time, or here's how I learned this. There's a level of gratitude and appreciation and empathy for yourself to understand. I don't need to. I've gone away for like a week vacation at a time and like truly sat with my feelings and understood, but that just taught me, hey, here's how to approach everyday life. And sometimes when I'm just like eating breakfast, I'll just take a moment for myself, or, you know, whether I'm going to work out, and like just reflecting doesn't have to be a big thing that you take a break for. You can slowly start to build that into your life. And I think that's a true skill that a lot of people don't do, is like, instead of me saying, oh, I need a break every couple days or whatever, it's like when you start to reapproach the way you work and say, well, wow, I can just appreciate the work I did today. or the work I've done in years past, that's just a skill that takes time.
I think that is one of those skills that is definitely transferable across whatever it is that you do, whatever industry is, and even not even through work, even just your personal life, just learning to look back and really think about and appreciate what you've done and maybe what went into it, what you've learned from it, and like remembering sometimes how you felt when you were doing a project or something like that, and how stressful or like how much you thought you couldn't do it or anything like that. And then when you look back and you think it actually turned out pretty good, or, you know, maybe it wasn't the best, but now that I know I can do it this way, or, you know, learning lessons and appreciating yourself, like you said, is very important. So tell us about when it comes to projects that you look back on and you think, I wish I did that better. Is there anything that stands out to you that you kind of wish you could have redone?
Every project.
Every project.
I mean, honestly, it's like there's certain things that I've done that I never view any of my projects as like, oh, I killed it and I wouldn't do it differently. There's always hindsight's 20/20, and so you'd always be like, well, if I had more time on this, or if I... So there's every project I've learned something, and I would always redo anything I've ever done, but like that's just the growth of learning. So I don't have like a direct answer for you. I always see the flaws in my own design, but I've had people come up to me like when we did our tournaments or whatever, and they're like, no, you did a wonderful job, but you have to understand how to take critique as much as you take praise. So when you take praise and you say, oh, you killed it, you did a great job, or hey, this video was, you should fix this about this video, you should take those hand in hand. So you can't take all the praise and then no critique, and you can't take all the critique with no praise. So sometimes you just have to understand it's a balance. And so does praise mean more to you than critique, or vice versa? And so it's living with that with yourself is like, that's a really important skill. Yeah.
One of those things that you have to learn quickly when it comes to putting things out for public consumption is learning how to take critique and also the praise, because sometimes, you know, you could read a whole bunch of nice comments and not know how to take it in, but you read one bad comment and all of a sudden that can affect you like nothing else. It just sinks in your head.
Absolutely. You have to have a balance of it. And so you could say, well, I don't really care if you like this or not. Like, I'm just putting this out there for me. And then you get that one comment that's like, well, I wish he would have made this font, whatever. And you're like, that if that truly resonates with you and like ruins your creative experience, then maybe there's a point that you have to work on of whether it's the look of your videos, how your videos feel. And you could take critique openly. I'm not saying don't ever take critique, but also take praise the same way. Of, wow, this project truly resonated with people. That's fine. But also understanding the flip side of it is like, there's always going to be someone that that hates your work or hates your clips or hates your like projects. It's like, you will never appease everyone. And once you learn that you'll never appease everyone, you'll have so much more peace of mind with that.
Do you, like I've looked back at some of the TST content, and there is it's a lot of like reactive, a lot of gameplays, a lot of different games. Can you talk about the Pokemon Sangria project and how much went into trying to do something a lot different to something that you normally do?
That project, I call these Hitch projects. And so what a Hitch project is Hitch will come to me and pitch me a wild idea. So in this case, it was, hey, I want to make a game where all my friends are the characters. So can you work with this developer and then like, we'll just make this happen. And he doesn't just like leave me on my own. Like, he's very much involved in this process, but I'm the logistics guy. So it comes to, okay, well, how do we make sprite art? How do we like animate these in game? How do we make this playable on stream? I also look at all the law side of things of like, well, Nintendo is very strict on emulators and all of that. So how do we go through this process? So that process was supposed to be 2 weeks. I think we spent 4 months on it. Wow. And it frame by frame, pixel by pixel. My girlfriend drew all the art behind it. I did all the other assets working with a developer. And ultimately, that was the biggest learning experience. The video didn't perform even close to what we had hoped it would have been. It didn't get picked up by any algorithms. It was a project that I poured so much heart into that just fell on its face. And the people that played it really enjoyed it, and that was great. But that was just a learning experience of like, not everything you do is going to be a smash success. And we would have loved for that video to perform, but it didn't work out. And that's just an appreciation of what happened. Like it wasn't a huge problem for us that it didn't perform. It was just on to the next one. And that's like, once you learn how to deal with those successes as much as the failures and learn from them, it's a beneficial experience either way.
It's one of those things where it's such a large project, and so much time, resources went into it. I know there's a common thing where people say you just re-upload the video and wait for it to get up, but that's one of those things. It's not that simple, and you kind of have to just either move on. I mean, I can't imagine how much more time you could put into that to make more kind of thing, more videos.
There's a sunken cost there. So when you go about it, like, well, just re-upload the video, or like, I wish it was that simple, and I wish maybe one day the video blows up and does millions of views. That's cool. Until that day, I'm gonna just keep doing the same thing that I'm doing and learning from it. Because now, before that process, I had no idea how sprite art worked, or emulators, or how any of that worked. But now if someone approached me with a project like that, I have all that knowledge to fall back on. So even though that video didn't perform, I can still fall back on it and say, well, I did this once, let's see how I can reapply that.
Yeah, that's success that you've taken out of it. You've learned more things, and you've got more experience that you can take into the next job or the next crazy project that Hitch brings you.
Right, absolutely.
So how do you feel about where you stand right now? Are you happy with, it might be a weird question to ask, but do you see yourself like you've had success, like you are a success, or are you still kind of caught up in that day-to-day, I haven't really thought about my position of where I am? Because you've come from being a fan and somebody who's just been like a viewer and come into the team and taken all this responsibility. Do you feel like you've made it kind of thing, or is that one of those feelings that you can't see happening?
I don't view I don't have an I made it moment. I have moments that I am truly appreciative over, but I think my mentality going into this isn't a wins and loss, and it's more of a where I'm at in my life. I'm 26. I left a full-time job, and I'm pretty much working a startup. So what success to some people is making millions of views, or like I've had a TikTok do 5 million views, 1 million views, 2 million views. So it's like, that wasn't a success moment. Those were successes that I'm like, wow, I'm proud of those. But I don't have a moment specifically that I look back and say, well, I made it because this happened. I'm truly appreciative of all wins and losses. And that probably sounds so, I would say, flat of an answer, but it's just true. I don't really I try not to take anything for granted, and I truly try to just appreciate every single day of this, because I'm one of those people that I'm like, well, tomorrow this is all going to end and I'm going to have to go find a new corporate job, or like, I truly try to appreciate every single moment of this, because it is such a unique opportunity to do something like this. So it's every day. Every day is my I made it moment. I get to do this every single day, so I should treat it like a unique opportunity. And I truly have the world in the palm of my hand right now of this is my life. This is what I get to do. And I'm super grateful for it.
I love that. And there's also this this thing I see where you've kind of, it's hard when you've gone from somebody who maybe streamed themselves, made their own videos for themselves, their own content and everything like that. When you go into work as a team and all of a sudden maybe you're not the guy on the camera, you don't get the recognition, maybe your name isn't on the title or something like that, but you've sort of, that ego, you get, everyone has their own ego and they need it filled and acknowledged in some way, but it doesn't have to be the same way. You don't have to be the guy on the thumbnail. You don't have to be the guy on the title. You can be that guy behind the scenes, and you know that you've made so much happen, and that's your recognition. You recognize yourself.
Right. I definitely have had comments to me of like, well, why don't, well, Atlas did that, or like, why aren't you more, I guess, upfront about like, well, no, this was my idea, or like my thing. You'll never operate as a team. You'll never succeed as a team if you're constantly putting your ego in front of that. And you can have self-interest and self-investment into things, but if my team succeeds, then I succeed. And that's an important thing to understand, is understanding their vision. How does that correspond with your vision? So I know I'll pat my own ego for a second. I know I've done some kick-ass shit. And I know I've done some great work. And at the end of the day, like, I'm fulfilled by that. You can't really see it, but there's a check on my wall that says we helped raise $65,000 for men's health and suicide awareness. That is cool to me. And that is the justification I need to keep doing this thing. So it's not, I've had people with like my passes on, like, wearing them, and I've seen people using my backgrounds, even though I know, like, they didn't know I created that. I still know to my true self that, like, I know I made that difference, and that's okay with me. I don't have to have my name on every single thing.
That's a super cool thing too. And I like, that's a life lesson. I think that maybe it's hard to realize sometimes. I personally think I was fortunate enough. My dad used to force me into the team sports, and he's like, you don't have to like everyone, but you have to learn how to work as a team, because, you know, you're not going to, in a team sport, there's only so much you can do on your own. So you might hate that guy over there, but he's going to help you do better, and you're going to help him do better. And learning to work as a team is one of those things where you realize that more and more as you get into, like, you came from the corporate world yourself. You need to be able to operate, because you can't do everything yourself. And there's, like you said, you can specialize in something, but someone else specializes in something else. And getting that project done as a team and finding pleasure in that success, even though you might not be at the forefront of it, is something that, yeah, it can get overlooked, and some people get selfish in that. I need to be that guy kind of thing.
I don't need to be the guy behind anything. I appreciate when I've met people and they know who I am and know what I've done, and getting the opportunities to speak on it like this. But I don't need to be in the camera. I don't need to be the guy in the thumbnail, or I love to get credit, of course. Like, I don't want people to just go, like, steal my work and be like, oh, I did it. Like, I love to get the credit. And I don't think it has to be, I'm not in this for the views. I'm not in this for the clout, as people would say. Like, I'm just here to do my job, and I'm here to make sure that things get done when they're supposed to get done. And as long as I do a good job and build the recognition that is truly deserved, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that outlook, because it truly brings me value. And to credit of the conversation you had about teams, I stepped into a team environment where 3 of the guys have been best friends for like 15 years. And so it takes a very detail-oriented person. I'm stepping into inside jokes, and when they know Blake's not in the mood to do something, or Hitch is not in the mood, or George is not in the mood to do something, they know how to counteract that. that was a huge lesson for me to understand of how this team even works.
The dynamics of everything.
The dynamic and when someone's joking, when they're not joking. Luckily, I have a bunch of brothers, so like these three just feel like my older brothers. But like it's a very big thing to step into something and be like, okay, I know you guys are best friends, but like business, and there's stream teams out there, but I'll be damned, I don't think anyone else can do it like they do it. Because when you're friends for 15 years and there's money involved, there's sponsorships, there's employees, like that takes a different kind of dynamic that you rarely see. And that's super important to recognize.
It would be a very special team in that they've obviously brought you in as, like you said, the newcomer to their group, to their friendship, to their team. To be able to maybe sometimes take a step back and say, all right, Atlas, you're right. Let's follow what you have to say rather than always.
That's rare, but I appreciate that sentiment. Yeah.
It must come up sometime where you've been like, you put your foot down and say, no, this is the way we should be doing something, and being able for them to put their feelings aside and to listen to you. I think that's a credit to them and a credit to you for the way you go about things.
TST is such a crazy dynamic, and as much as they are like my older brothers, it's like, it's such a unique opportunity, and I'm forever grateful for it, to get to work with people that I watched and like I was a fan of, to step in and be like, hey, we have this huge project, we need help, and to come in and really understand I'm not the only person doing all this stuff. It's like this is a dream job for me, don't get me wrong. Like I truly appreciate everything that has transpired to get me here. But it's every day. It's like it's a process that keeps on going, and some days are better, some days are worse, but just knowing in the end, it's like, these guys are great to me, and even though they drive me crazy sometimes, it's good. It's a good dynamic to have.
I love the fact that TST as a team, it's kind of come up on this first-person shooter, Call of Duty, Overwatch, whatever the game is kind of thing. But you also branch out and do a lot of things that, like you said, that check on the wall. You do a lot of charity work, raising money for different causes, tournaments, getting the community involved in a lot of things. And you've even started being involved with the Women's League in Call of Duty. So yeah, some of these projects must be super cool to work on. How do you pick on which direction you guys go on making these decisions?
The Women's League was an interesting one. Shout out Allie, because she's incredible. Originally it started as I was doing some of their logo work, and then it all kind of just piles on, and it's like, hey, well, if you guys are doing a league and like everything like that, then I'm down to help however I can. And I mean, the WXC is such a cool project, and it's so underrepresented in gaming to have women actually competing, especially in Call of Duty, where it's such a male-dominated esport, that when she came to me for that, it was like, I want to help in any way I can, so absolutely. Like, let's knock it out, whatever you need. And so when you're truly invested in a project like that, it makes it so much easier. And whatever direction she wanted to go in, we were going in that direction, and whatever solution I could provide, I was hoping I could bring it justice, and I feel like I did. That is a project that I truly look back on, and I'm like, I was stoked. And I'm still stoked to work on it.
It's continuously, like, you're still doing work for them now, aren't you? It's like not a relationship that's ended. You're still working together.
Yep, I'm still working with Allie, and hopefully we get a season 2. I haven't, Call of Duty tournaments and things like that are a little all over the place. Just like Activision and how Activision runs things, but hopefully we get a season 2, and I can't wait to keep working on that stuff. Yeah,
I can imagine there's a lot of red tape that goes into doing that kind of thing, but when it comes to working on your own projects, it's a little bit more relaxed and things like that. So how do you come up with some of the charities the ideas, all that community stuff that you guys do? Is it you guys reaching out to these other organizations, or people come to you and say, hey, we have this idea, would you like to help us raise this money, kind of thing?
In between Call of Duty seasons, for the CDL, we've always done off-season tournaments. So that's throwback games, and last year was the first one that we did in person. But we've always raised money for Movember, which is men's health and suicide awareness, because one, that's truly that's a charity that Hitch really holds dear to, for his personal reasons. And so we've always had a great relationship with Movember. They're wonderful. They're a wonderful charity to work with, and in the kind of view of something that isn't really spoken about online is mental health. And we're just now having those real open conversations of like, it's okay to not be okay. Here's hotlines that you can reach out to. It's important to go to therapy. And so we've always wanted to bring that forward and say, hey, this is important. We want to support this in any way we can. And even like in the Team Summertime chat, it constantly pops up is, hey, are you struggling? Is everything okay? If you need a number to call this, and here's more information. It's like, we want our community pretty male dominated on the internet, just on Twitch and in Call of Duty in general. It's like, we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity, not just men, but to really open those doors of saying, hey, it's okay to not be okay. Here's a conversation that if it needs to happen, it can.
It's one of those conversations that we acknowledge needs to be had, and it is getting started because, it's always been that internet a very toxic place, and, there's a lot of trolls, and it's very easy to, if you put yourself out there, you get torn down very quickly. But it's good that there are things like that where conversations, like you said, are starting to happen, and there is work behind the scenes. You guys do all the community work as well, just trying to get that ball rolling, because it's one of those things. Like, I've raised money for Movember myself personally with, workplace stuff back in the day. But it's always, we need to have this conversation. It's very hard to get that started sometimes.
It is, and it's hard to. We are always super thankful when people come into chat and be like, "Hey, you guys changed my day around just from having even a bad day." It's you changed, like, you never want that to go unnoticed and underappreciated. Like, and sometimes as a content creator, you start to, all those messages start to pass by, but truly understanding, hey, our content makes a true difference. So let's treat it like that, does give you a perspective on the respect that your viewers deserve and that your content deserves, and the time that you're spending making sure that every step of the way you're fulfilling those boxes and you're checking those boxes. It's important to understand and to have that conversation be so open.
Yeah, and like you guys, obviously you guys have taken responsibility for the position that you hold, being influential over so many people. I've said this on a previous podcast, but based on the sheer amount of time that you spend on the internet, either interacting with people or putting your content out, having people watch you have an impact, whether you notice it or not, on people. So many people, it might be one person, but a lot of people look up to these larger creators, larger professionals that do this, and it's really good that there's people out there who are happy to make a good impact, and it's not all about making money, getting clicks, getting clout, like you said. Like, there's that human side to things that, it's really good that these positive things happen in the industry. It
is, and you also have to look at it from the other side. Yes, we are looking for clicks and all of those things, but it's not with ill intent. It's not like drama channels, and we're not, as much as people want to say reacting is stealing content. It is content that works, yeah. Right? So it is content itself. So we're not making content with ill intent. we try to be more positive than negative about things, and try to also just kind of stick to our lane. This is just me talking from a TST perspective, but just me alone. And I don't go looking for drama, and like if there's a problem, we sort it out, and that's it. I don't like I don't need to make it about aired out on the timeline or anything like that. So
it's not all about just putting your personal opinion out there. Obviously, you represent a whole bunch of people, so you have to kind of be careful sometimes with how much you say. But so how much do you look around for content-wise? Do you take inspiration from other creators, other people, designers? Like, how do you get your inspiration for things that you do?
I am a sponge all the time. So I watch every tutorial. I watch even things that like I'm not even into. Like I watch like like sound designing and of like whatever. I try to absorb it all. I'm a fan of everybody. I'm constantly watching content, even just making short form myself. I'm trying to watch for like trends and songs that are on the rise or whatever, and like so there's a level of chasing that. But I do that anyways, to be honest. I'm just a curious guy. I pretty much watch everything I can, and I pretty much do that in terms of everything. Like I watch everything. I try to listen to everything. I listen to a bunch of podcasts and whatever is catching my eye. I really, if I get super obsessed with something, then I'll go down that rabbit hole. But
yeah, it can be quite easy to get stuck on the way you do things, and that's how you stick to it. But if you're always taking in more information, you're kind of evolving as you go without even trying. So what's the plan for the next 5 years or so? Do you guys think ahead that far? How far ahead do you look? And even just personally for yourself, what's the next thing?
Right now, it's like I know I talked about having the 5-year plan, 10-year plan, whatever. Right now, it's just making sure that the projects I'm working on succeed and pouring my heart and soul into everything like that. Like we're gearing up for the next year of content, and the way that everything, like the charity tournaments and some big projects I got going right now. It's really just making sure every project I try my hardest on, and work as much as I can to make sure they succeed. So really what's next is just bringing that same energy, that same passion, and keeping it alive, and building any step that I go, trying to build it to be as successful as I can. So
you guys pretty much only look that 1 year ahead, or like how far ahead
I would say
plan?
So.
Yeah.
It's different with TST. It's the guys come up with all their own ideas and content ideas, and then we just knock those out until we feel like changing things. It's not I think from that perspective it's more of what can we do next? What's the next project? And they have goals, and that's really for them to speak for. But for me, it's just to make sure I can do the best with the time and the resources I have.
Yeah. In terms of how the formula works there at TST, either the dynamic that you've helped create or where it's come from and everything, how do you feel like that it differs between yourselves to another stream team organization type thing, or is everyone pretty similar with how they go about things?
There is a guy for everything. For a TSC, it's, I love working with them because it's, if we're talking about videos, it's, there's certain things within a team that if we're working with the editor or the thumbnail, and for example, Blake is the person I run all my, if I need a critique, I run it by Blake, because he's going to have those critiques for me, and I know he's not meaning it ill intent. It's Blake's a picky guy. If I need ideas, it's Hitch. If we are looking for general concepting on things, and as a team, we fit well together because there's so many different pieces to that. So there's 5 of us. Drew, that's the editor, myself, TST. We have a couple people other that we work with, but it's very it's a very team driven environment, just depending what we're talking about, to be honest. I know that's kind of a flat answer, but
no, but like, do you know of another Atlas out in another team, somebody who just can do what needs to be done? Or is this pretty much like, what I'm asking is this sort of like a role that you would say is common between yourselves and other organizations, or is this just like a unique setup that you guys have?
I don't know of someone that's another Atlas. I know there's some people in the industry that I've looked up to, especially when I was first starting out. Like Tim has a guy, his name is Whips, and a bunch of people would know him in the industry. Personally though, I don't know how specifically those teams work. So I don't know if Whips, I know he controls things on streams, or other people in the industry. I know some people are editors and all of that. So I don't really know. I don't really have someone that I message and I'm like, oh, this job, right? Like I don't have like another direct comparison, which is, if there is one, I just don't know about it. It's not, I don't feel like I'm the only one in the industry that's doing this kind of thing. Because it's just so many different moving pieces, and some people are graphic designers, or some people are video editors, some people are managers. It's completely different. Yeah.
I just thought, that reaching out to somebody and being like, hey, how do you deal with this kind of thing, this kind of situation? I was wondering if there was someone else like you said, hey, this job, right? But
yeah, I don't really have anyone that I know that does the exact things I do. Dude. I think, and that's just unique.
That is unique, man. And it was a pleasure having you on to talk about this kind of thing, because like I said, I'm very unfamiliar with the esports scene and all that kind of thing. And when Brandon told me about what it is that you do and how all encompassing it is, I was like, dude, this is so unique. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure, and I always love to hear about the things in the content creator space, and I seriously appreciate all the time that you're taking with everyone. I know you had a couple episodes with like Joe, and I've been actually really kind of binging this podcast, so it's been awesome to be a guest, and I seriously appreciate the time.
Hey man, thank you for the guest, and I appreciate it. Maybe we can run it back another time.
Absolutely. Thank you.